You're listening to the AVIT Amplifier. Each week, we'll feature voices and ideas that need to be amplified in the higher education and pro-AV IT communities. This show is brought to you by higheredav.com. And now here's your host, Ryan Gray.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in again to the AVIT Amplifier. As always, my name is Ryan Gray, and I am your host. And if it is Wednesday, you know your podcast feed has been refreshed with new content, and this Wednesday is no different. I oftentimes say, without fail in that, but sometimes we fail. A couple of weeks ago, I did a cross post of an episode from a different podcast feed, the Hetma Presents feed, which you should, if you are not subscribed to, please find and subscribe to it. Great shows coming out on that feed. And then, of course, last week, we just didn't have an episode. And sometimes things get busy. One of my excuses is that between Hetma Presents and some of the other things I've been working on in higher ed AV land, there's a lot going on, and we're making some improvements that I'm really happy with. It's not that I haven't been podcasting, it's just that I haven't been doing this podcast as much. So please do not fear that invites are out, new guests are coming your way, which I'm very excited about. This is one of my favorite things to do. So when it goes on hiatus, it is a bummer for me. So for today, what I have for you is another installment of the Gray Matter Moment. Once again, shout out to Lucas Baker on the YC team for the original idea that brought this to bear. And I'm going to try and not go that long today. But this is a place and time where I give you a little monologue about something that either I've been thinking about or has been significant, something I think that might be helpful, or sometimes something I just want to share. And as I've said, nobody likes the sound of their own voice through a microphone more than I do. I hope that it's in there. I've had the genesis of doing this as an episode came this year, are what we call convocation. That word gets used differently in different places, but for us, basically, it's an all-college gathering in our Performing Arts Center that takes place kind of on the week before classes start, the Monday, which is kind of the return to work for all of our professors and that sort of thing. And we always have a guest speaker. And this year's guest speaker, the goal was to find somebody to help talk about dealing with a lot of change, as I think everybody in the world now is having change. In higher ed, there's absolutely no doubt about that. But here at YC, we're taking a very aggressive tact, a very aggressive stand into the current world of higher ed, and really trying to not just adapt to change, but create change. It's a very exciting place to be. It can also be a pretty exhausting place to be when there are lots of large projects in the air at the same time, and that's seen as good, not as a challenge. The speaker was trying to. It was bringing ideas in from other authors and things into how you deal with when things are changing. But she had a slide on the top of it, and the subject on the top of the slide was radical acceptance. And I recognize it because radical acceptance is something that I have kind of been working on the past couple of years. I've mentioned on the show before and recommended being in therapy for anybody. You don't have to be sick to go to the doctor. You don't have to be sick to work with a therapist. And for me, it's really been an exercise of kind of having a personal trainer for my mind and emotions, and somebody to really help me think about things. And early on in that process, when I was in a place where there were some things that felt out of control, and there were some things that I was really angry about or frustrated about, things I didn't know how to deal with or didn't know how to process, and that was causing frustration and fear. One of the things that my counselor first started talking to me about, and we did some exercises on, was the concept of radical acceptance. And so I want to share with you a little bit about that today, what it's done for me and how I think maybe it fits in our world. So I'll give you a couple ground rules, and with all that, let me just clarify, I am not a mental health professional. I just play one on TV. But this concept of radical acceptance comes out of DBT, or dialectical behavior therapy, that is kind of old. And there's a lot of the current things that are methods in dealing with people in pain, or people who are struggling, that have come out of that kind of theory of psychology. And what's cool about it is just two words. So in the concept of practicing radical acceptance, the word radical emphasizes that acceptance needs to be wholehearted, mind, body, spirit, and emotion, rather than just partial or intellectual. But the key part is that acceptance does not mean approval or resignation. It's an acknowledgement of the truth, and as you can see, I'm reading this so that I get it right. It's an acknowledgement of the truth of the present moment as a prerequisite for effective change. And that is, I think, really such a simple, basic concept that I think everybody would say, yeah, of course, I need to understand how things actually are before then I can participate or make change or influence in it. But the more you look around, the more I think you look at yourself and your coworkers, I think the more things you'll hear, or that will be causing, it will call to your attention, places where we struggle with this. And like one of the main ones is, it shouldn't be that way. Something's coming up and people go, well, it shouldn't be like that. And is that just a statement, or is that a way of not accepting the state of whatever you're looking at? It's a way of rejecting it. So one of the things about this that has been really helpful for me is when, and again, I'm going to avoid speaking about things specifically or in the first person, because we all have challenges with coworkers and friends and family, and this is not the place for me to talk about those things. But I think we have all could think about and identify a situation in our life, and it could be from anywhere that that is bad, that is painful, that is hurtful, that is sad or disappointing, that you just think it shouldn't be that way. And you can think and see how it doesn't have to be, but it just is. And being able to put "it just is" in front of "it should be" allows you to actually see it clearly. And if you can't, then you won't, if that makes sense. If you can't accept, it doesn't mean you have to agree with it. But to truly accept what is actually happening, only then can you actually process and deal with it. What this is a mechanism for, it's a mindfulness, non-judgmental way, a mindfulness-based, non-judgmental way of reducing avoidance. So let's pick a low-stakes thing that would go in there and relates to AV, hired AV, which is this. There's two places I can go with this. One of them, but let's start this, which is the ongoing conversation over, AV over IP. Every one of us knows people that are all in on AV over IP, and they are moving their campuses that way, and they see it the way of the future. And we all know people that are super dubious of it. And you hear things about it, which is, well, yeah, that's great, but now if the network goes down, now none of my stuff works. Or, I should say I have a cloud-based control system. If we lose our connection to the internet, now we're going to lose X, Y, and Z. I can't work with my networking team. They'll never let me do it on all of these kinds of things. And I know this, if those things sound like things you've said, I realize it sounds like I'm being derogatory towards them. But sometimes there is an undercurrent of just people not wanting things to be different than they are. And so without being able to accept that the industry is moving this way and that there are reasons for that, it becomes hard to ever really then get into the merits of what might be good about that platform, how you might engage with it, how it might be beneficial for your campus or your students, how you can overcome the challenges that seem to pop up from the beginning and actually truly see the benefits. But it takes that level of acceptance. As long as we reject or don't want to deal with something that is happening, a change that is taking place, we'll never actually be able to truly engage with it. And the one of the big challenges that comes along with that is sometimes the things we have to accept are not easy to do. And this one of the things I quote on here is, Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and a lot of these concepts are stated or restated different ways. But in Covey, he talks about the knowing what your circle of control, your circle of influence, and your circle of concern are. And things that are in your circle of concern are things that you are worried about. Things in your circle of control, of course, you are also in your circle of concern, but you have control over them. And then there's things in your circle of influence where you may be able to influence the outcome, but they are of your concern. And the argument is the things that are outside your influence, but inside your concern, are places that often generate worry. And we spend a lot of time and effort worrying about those things. But if they are outside our circle of control and they're outside our circle of influence, then by definition, there's nothing we can do about them. So the time and effort and energy we spend on them is wasted. We need to focus on the things that are within our control. And I think for that to work, you have to fold in this idea of radical acceptance. Because if we cannot accept things as they are, we can't understand what's in our circle of influence and what's not. And I think you probably can name, wow, that was loud. My mic fell over. Name places or times where you've seen people spend a lot of time, effort, and energy on something they can't actually change. And if only they could accept that they can't change it, then they could focus on the things that they can change and be effective in that way. And then ironically, the better and more you concentrate on your circle of control, the more the good work you do there expands your circle of influence based on that reputation, and you might actually be able to do something about that situation in the future. But we hamstring ourselves by kind of putting the cart before the horse on that. And if I almost said something that sounds familiar there, another way you could say this comes from the mantra or the prayer, which is, Lord, grant me the wisdom to, see the things I can change, or to you know what I'm saying, recognize the thing. No. All right, that was so embarrassing. Let me say it the right way. Is to grant you the courage to change the things you can, but of the patience to accept the things I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. That comes from it's kind of the beginning of I think the addiction recovery, and there's a reason for that, because if we can't acknowledge those things in reality, even when they're painful, then we can't actually deal with them in an effective way. So again, I know I'm now kind of talking in circles, and I'm doing a thing I do where these things make a lot of sense in my head, and maybe I don't say them as clearly as I think they are. But I would just, I'll give you all right, I'll give you 5 steps here, and then we'll get wrapped up. The skills that come along with radical acceptance. Number 1, observe reality without judgment. This is hard because a lot of us are driven by values and judgment to guide certain things. And if we overlay those on other people and other situations, it can lead us to a place where we can't see them for what they are. Seeing it without judgment doesn't mean you have to agree with it. Another person may behave in a way that you do not agree with, but if you can't accept that is how they are behaving, or applying applying to it more than what it actually is, then you will almost by definition misunderstand it. Number 2, identify what can and cannot be changed. What is actually in your sphere of ability to change and not. Turn the mind repeatedly toward acceptance when resistance returns. So, there's a new boss in, and I like the way the old boss did it. So I'm just going to ignore certain things that they're asking, et cetera, et cetera. We've seen you. I know we've all experienced things like that. We've had places and times where something happens and you just go, I cannot deal with that. But when that I cannot deal with it moves from something acute to something systemic, we are in that challenge. And when we find ourselves resisting what is actually happening, it is by definition futile. It will lead to, banging your head against the wall, which is kind of where that comes from. So that once you've identified the things that can and cannot be changed, as your mind moves back from a level of accepting that to trying to resist it, you have to turn your mind back to acceptance. That is, turn your mind to the things that are within your circle of control and influence, and not to the things that are outside of it. Number 4, engage the body. Release tension, breathe deeply, and allow emotional waves to pass. I know that probably everybody has done this, but we have an ability now to understand our brains and our brain chemicals in a way that a lot of people haven't before us. And when certain things come up, the adrenaline spike can happen. And instead of that adrenaline pushing us to require an action that, we can recognize what's happening and abate it and make it, we can see it for what it is as it's happening. The other thing that goes into that is role playing a lot, and we could talk about that in a different place. But yeah, if you're going in to deal with a situation that is hard or frustrating, something that could be threatening or angry, having somebody literally pre-experience it with you so that you can experience the emotional rise and fall, the next one won't be as high and you'll know what it feels like. That's one of the reasons that immersive learning things are so popular right now, is because the ability to actually pre-live situations that people will need to live in their careers there's no better preparation than that. And finally, number 5 is to pay attention to self-talk. That is, using statements like, quote, "This is the way things are right now," or, quote, "Fighting reality will not make it different." Again, those are pretty basic things in there. So I would put the call to action or the call to thought, and again, thank you for listening if you have, that what are the things that you're dealing with that maybe your frustration, your inability to move, the challenge that you might have in knowing what to do or how to deal with the situation might be stemming from simply just not being able to accept that it's happening, or to accept the full reality of what's happening, to see it clearly, especially when what is right in front of our face is something that we have a reason to reject or not want, something that seems uncomfortable or painful, that involves change when we'd rather be comfortable. And see if there's a place to identify, like we said, what can be changed and what can't. Think about the things that can. Let the other pieces go. And even if you think something is going the wrong direction, accept the parts of it, see them for what they are, and see if that doesn't lead to new insights about how you can move forward. It's not nihilism. It's not nothing matters, so I just accept things and go through the flow. It's that the way to change things, the way to influence the outcome, is to accept it for what it truly is to begin. So thank you for listening. I apologize for the abstractness of the thing that I'm saying. and see if isn't there there's not some further reading or some information about radical acceptance that you might look up or think about. Just Google it. Take a look and see if there are places in your life that you could benefit from tools or thoughts that could help you find ways to not give up, to deal with contradictions, to deal with things that are unacceptable or things that you're trying to avoid that are holding you hostage. And with all that, thank you for listening. My name is Ryan. We will be back with our standard format next week. In the meantime, everyone go easy, take care, and we will see you next Wednesday.
Thank you for listening to the AV-IT Amplifier. Join us again for next week's episode when we'll welcome a new guest who you'll want to hear from. We promise. Your host has been Ryan Gray. He's on the tweeters at Ryan_A_Gray, or find him on LinkedIn to connect. Please subscribe and give the show a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. This show is brought to you by higheredav.com. The views expressed here are not necessarily those of our respective institutions, employers, or sponsors. Everyone hang in there, go easy, and we'll be back next week.